The broom handle caught the edge of the codex at 5:15 in the morning, and that was all it took. I had swept the grand convocation hall of the Vathoran archive for 22 years. I knew every seam between the pale flagstones, every draft that came off the scholar, alcoves in the east wing. Every hour the light changed through the high arched windows set into the dome. I knew which corners collected grit and which stayed clean on their own. I knew the smell of the archive at 5 in the morning, cold stone and old paper, and something dry and faintly metallic that I'd never been able to name. Something that came from the codex itself, I think, though I'd never said that to anyone. I wasn't supposed to touch it. The placard mounted on the low iron railing that separated the codex from the hall floor said, in 11 languages of the Continuance, that no individual was to make direct contact with the Sorveth Codex under any circumstances. I had read that placard so many times the words had gone soft and meaningless in my head, the way a word does when you repeat it too many times. I wasn't touching it. I was sweeping past it. The angle was wrong, the draft shifted, and the broom handle swung 2 inches farther than I intended. The obsidian surface didn't feel like stone when it made contact. It felt like pressing your palm against something just barely warmer than your hand. Pulled back instantly. Nothing happened. I stood there for a moment in the early quiet, holding my broom, listening to the archive breathe. Then the codex began to open. It wasn't fast. That's the thing I've tried to explain to the archivists and the scholars and the 2 Continuance officials who came from off-world to interview me. It didn't crack open like something broken free. It opened the way a person opens their eyes, slowly, with intention. The obsidian surface, which had been solid and lightless for 10,000 years, began to show depth, as though the stone had become very dark water. Something moved behind it, something that had been waiting a long time. First seal line appeared at the base, a faint incision of pale blue light, no wider than a thread, running horizontally across the lower third of the slab. I watched it because I didn't know what else to do. I had heard the scholars discuss the codex many times from a respectful distance. I served them tea and cleared their materials and swept under their tables while they debated its origin and its purpose and its lock system, which 11 separate research institutes had spent a combined 800 years trying to understand. They had brought sonic instruments and spectral probes and Continuance-certified archive keys. They had sent emissaries from every sovereign lineage in the records, because the prevailing theory held that the codex was sealed to all but the blood of the civilization that had made it. No one had ever agreed on which civilization that was. As the second seal line opened above the first, then a third, they climbed the face of the slab like something counting upward. I set my broom against the iron railing, which I was not supposed to do either, and I stood still. By the time the 5th seal line appeared, the light coming off the codex was enough to throw shadows. Mine stretched long across the flagstones toward the east alcoves, thin and dark, the way shadows look at sunrise. I remember noticing that and thinking it was a strange hour for a shadow that long. The dome windows hadn't caught the sun yet. The light was coming from the codex. The archive's early staff found me there. Senrath opened the scholar registration desk at 6, came through the double doors at 5:30, and stopped in the entrance. I heard her make a sound. Not a word, just a sound, and then I heard her running, back the way she'd come. She was going for the head archivist, didn't move. The codex had 7 seal lines open now, a ladder of blue light climbing its face, and the air in the hall had changed the way air changes before a storm. Not cold exactly, but pressured, as if the room was holding something in. They came quickly after that. Senrath, and behind her Proctor Vaethos, the head archivist, in his formal gray robe, holding the outer hem clear of the floor as he walked fast. 2 of the seal authentication specialists from sub-level 3, Orith and Colvin, still pulling on their archive coats. A junior records clerk I didn't know by name. They spread out along the far side of the railing and stared. Vaethos looked at the codex. Then he looked at me. "Voss," he said. His voice was steady. He had a steady voice. I had worked under his administration for 11 of my 22 years, and I had never heard it waver. "Step back from the exhibit boundary." "I am back from the exhibit boundary," I said. I was standing 2 feet behind the railing. My broom was against it, not me. He looked at the broom handle which was touching the iron rail. Then he looked at the 7 seal lines burning up the face of the codex. Then he looked at me again. "Did you make contact with the surface?" he said. "By accident," I said. "The broom, just the handle, just once." He was quiet for a moment. Oreth had her instrument out, a flat Continuance standard resonance reader, and she was sweeping it along the air in front of the codex without getting close. Her instrument was making a low, steady sound I hadn't heard it make before. "It's reading active seal dissolution," she said. "No one in particular. All 17 layers, sequential, not forced." "Sequential," Vathos repeated, as if it was asked, Oreth said. She sounded like she was choosing her words carefully. As if a recognized contact was made, and the system is responding in order. Colvin had been counting under his breath. 8, he said. "That's 8 open." There were 17 seals. Every research institute that had studied the codex agreed on that, whatever else they disagreed on. 17 sequential seals, each contingent on the one before it, each requiring not a key or an instrument or a code, but something the lock theorists had debated for centuries, without resolution. Acknowledgement, some called it. Recognition, said others. Consent, said a few. Though, that one had always made the Continuance officials uncomfortable, because it implied the codex was something other than an object. I watched the 9th seal line open. Vathos said again. Quieter this time. "Yes." "Did it respond when you made contact? Was there any immediate?" "It felt warm," I said. "That's all." Then I stepped back, and then it started. He was quiet again. 10th seal line appeared, and the light in the hall was bright enough, now that the overhead illuminators had dimmed themselves in compensation. The archive's automated systems thought it was daylight. It was 20 minutes to 6 in the morning. I had lived in the archive district my whole life. My mother had cleaned the scholar residences in the East Quarter. Her mother before her had worked in the archive cataloging rooms, though the records from that period were poor and I didn't know the details. There was a family story, passed down so many times it had gone soft at the edges, about an ancestor who had worked in this building a very long time ago, not cleaning, not cataloging, something my grandmother called keeping. But no one alive in my family knew what that meant, and I had grown up treating it as the kind of embellished thing families tell themselves. 11, 12. Everyone behind the second barrier, Vathos said. He meant the fixed brass rail 20 feet back, the emergency boundary. The staff moved without argument. Vathos moved last, pausing beside me.
"You too, Voss."
"Yes," I said, and I meant to move and I didn't. My feet stayed where they were, not because I was afraid, because the pull was different than that. Not toward something frightening, but toward something known. The way you feel stepping into a room you haven't been in for 30 years and finding the smell exactly as you left it. 13, 14. Thought about my grandmother's word. Keeping. She had said it like it meant something specific. Not housekeeping, not record keeping, something that stood alone. I had been in this building for 22 years and I had kept it. I had not thought of it in those terms before. 15. Vathos touched my arm gently and I took one step back with him, that was all. The 16th seal line opened and the obsidian surface was no longer dark. It was pale and luminous, and the light coming from it was the color of something very old, trying to remember warmth. The 17th line appeared. The hall went completely silent. Oreth had her hand over her instrument speaker, muffling it. The junior clerk had both hands pressed to their mouth. Colvin was writing quickly in his margin pad. Then the codex opened. Not the seals. Those were done. But the codex itself, the way a door opens when the last lock clears. Single smooth movement from the center outward. And what was inside was not pages. It was a chamber, no deeper than my outstretched arm could reach. And set into the back wall of that chamber was something I recognized without knowing I recognized it. A shallow stone basin in the shape of 2 hands, curved to hold water, or something like water though it was dry now. Below the basin, into the stone in a script no one at the Vathoran archive had ever successfully read, was an inscription. I could read it. I did not know how. I will say that plainly because it is the truth. I had no training in ancient script, no background in linguistics, no childhood instruction in any language other than Common Continuance Standard, and the 2 regional languages of the archive district. I could read it, the way you read your own name. Without translating, without effort, as though someone had put it there for no one but me. I read it once to myself, standing 20 feet from the Codex with Proctor Vathos's hand on my arm. I read it again to make sure. Then, I said it aloud quietly, because I was afraid that if I didn't say it to someone, it would become something I had imagined. It says the house is ready, I said. It says the water is laid in, and the watchfire is set, and the house is ready for the warden to return. Nobody spoke. It says it has been waiting, I said. The light from the chamber changed then. Not brighter, not differently colored, but directed. The way a lamp turns when someone adjusts it. The basin at the back of the chamber caught the light and held it, and the dry stone surface of the two-cupped hands began, very slowly, to show moisture, the way stone sweats in the morning before the heat comes. And I understood. I did not decide to understand, I simply did, that this had happened because I was here, because of what I had done or what I knew or what I intended, because of what I was. The Codex spoke once, not in Continuance standard, not in any language the archive's translators covered, or the scholars' institutes, or the 11 certified linguistic frameworks of the sovereign continuance. It spoke in something earlier than all of that, something that the Continuance's recorded history did not quite reach back far enough to contain. I understood every word. First breath, last warden. 4 words. That's all it said. I will spend the rest of my life finding out what they mean in full. And I think they mean a great deal. I think they mean that the archive was not built by the Continuance for the Continuance, that it was built before the Continuance existed, that it was built by people who swept floors and carried water and kept things quietly across generations, without knowing what they were keeping. But that morning, in that hall, with the dome windows beginning to show the first gray edge of actual daylight, and Proctor Vathos standing very still beside me and Orith's instrument gone silent in her hand, those 4 words were enough. I had come to work at 4:15 the way I had for 22 years. I had made my tea in the staff room, checked the supply closet, pulled my broom from the rack by the service door. I had swept 3 of the 4 quadrants of the hall before I got to the Codex. I would have swept the 4th quadrant and been done before the scholars arrived, and gone home at noon, and had soup, and read the evening paper on my front step. Instead, I was standing in the oldest building in the Continuance, inside a circle of spilled light from a Codex 10,000 years sealed, listening to the architecture of an entire lost civilization tell me it had been waiting for someone, exactly like me, someone with a broom and a family story and a word she didn't quite understand, to walk back through the door. The water in the basin caught the light and held it. I thought about my grandmother. I thought about what she had called it all those years ago when she passed the story down, keeping. Yes, I thought. That was exactly the word.